And I am very excited this morning to be able to share with you Encounters in the Milky Way. This is the 25th anniversary of the Rose Center for Earth and Space, and it makes this space show, which is our 7th space show since the Rose Center opened, particularly special. Since 2000, our space shows have transported millions of visitors to the edge of the observable universe with increasingly sophisticated visualizations based on observations from groundbreaking space missions and leading-edge scientific models. To date, our 6 space shows have been seen by millions of visitors and shown worldwide at 160 partner institutions in 40 countries. We're especially excited that today, the show today features the great Pedro Pascal as its narrator. Like a lot of our work, this space show and others that came before is made possible through a strong public-private partnership. Great thanks to our supporters and partners, which include NASA, a major partner and supporter of all of our space shows, and also a supporter of our astrophysics research and education here at the museum. Van Cleef and Arpels, and we're happy to have their team here with us today. The space show is just the most recent example of their generous support of and collaboration with the museum, including the current Cosmic Splendor exhibition in the Meister Gallery of our Mignone Halls of Gems and Minerals, and Robert and Kristen Peck. In addition, federal funding for the development of Encounters in the Milky Way was secured by New York Congressman Gerald Nadler, who represents our congressional district here at the museum. Those funds are administered by NASA. NASA also funds open space and open source software platform that's essential to the production of Encounters in the Milky Way and in Hayden Planetarium programming and research since 2015. Encounters in the Milky Way was produced with collaborators from more than 20 academic institutions, and those are all listed in the media kit, including the European Space Agency. The show's time-traveling journey is made possible by data from the European Space Agency's Gaia mission, launched in 2013 and concluded this March. This billion-star survey mapped precise positions, distances, and motions of nearly 2 billion stars in the Milky Way, one of the most transformative astronomical projects of the past century. I also like to offer great thanks to our amazing production team, some of you you'll be hearing from after the show. Executive producer Rosamund Kinsler, Senior Director of Science Education and Principal Investigator on the Open Space Project, Curator Jackie Faherty, Senior Research Scientist in the museum's Astrophysics Department and a Senior Education Manager in the Education Division, Director Carter Emmart, the museum's Director of Astrovisualization and one of the original team members of the NASA-funded Digital Universe and Open Space projects. Vivian Trakinsky, who directs the museum's Science Visualization program, is the producer. Laura Mustakursky, a writer and producer in the museum's Science Visualization group, wrote the strip. Musical score by Robert Miller, who also scored 4 of our previous space shows. And a very special thanks for narration direction by filmmaker Sean Levy, who is also an AMNH trustee. Before we begin the screening, I will tease that for the first time in the history of the Hayden Planetarium space shows, a discovery was made during the production process. And we'll tell you about that a bit more after the show. So now, I'm pleased to say you can relax. We are going to turn down the lights, and please enjoy Encounters in the Milky Way. Thank you. Really amazing. And so I now would like to invite my panelists to come up and join me here. And so we have on my right, Curator Jackie Faherty, Senior Research Scientist in the museum's Astrophysics Department and a Senior Education Manager in the Education Division. Director Carter Emmart, the museum's Director of Astrovisualization and one of the original team members of the NASA-funded Digital Universe and Open Space projects. And Vivian Trakinsky, producer of the show and Director of our Science Visualization program. So first, Jackie, as curator, what was the inspiration for the show? Why the Milky Way, why motion, and why now? As are these themes particularly interesting?
Yeah, I'll say, so there was this day that happened, and there's a day, I can tell you, it's an actual day, April 25th, 2018. That was the day that the European Space Agency's Gaia observatory that you saw the huge scene of at the beginning, they revealed this massive, amazing map. A map that is foundational in astrophysics. And on April 24th, I gave a talk in here to a sold-out crowd, and I told this audience, I don't know, they thought that I was on the Kool-Aid or something. I was like, it all changes tomorrow. It's all changing. Because up until that moment, we had about 116,000 stars that we had measured the distances to, and then we knew their motions really well. But the next day, we were getting nearly 2 billion. So to me, the most important thing and why this is happening now is because on April 25th, 2018, Gaia dropped a map that all humans should be proud of. We mapped the cosmos in a way, and the Milky Way really was the star of it, in a way we had never been able to do before. And because of that, that was the sheer inspiration for starting the conversations about this show, and we could test out some of the material with audiences in here, with open space. But because of Gaia, sometimes I call this a little love letter to Gaia in this show, because that map is so phenomenal.
And Carter, you've really dedicated your career here at the museum to astrovisualization. Why is visualization of science important? And how do you think about the blending of art and science, and what's the effect of the combining this blending of art and science?
Well, this museum, if it's anything, is a testament to wonder. Yeah, thank you. If this museum's a testament to anything, it's a testament to wonder. And I think wonder is a gateway to inspiration, and inspiration is a gateway to motivation. And that this museum is well loved from around the world because it delves into these topics. And it does that by demonstrating and immersing you, whether it's in front of the buffalo downstairs and seeing what those herds were like before we decimated them, to come in this room and be teleported to space accurately, foundation in the science. But the art is important because the art is the way to the soul, and I really think that is the key, and it's the testament to what this museum does. It's not just the collections, it's the presentation of it. And that is really, it fires up kids' imaginations. A colleague of mine one day dropped an old Time Out magazine on my desk and said, "You should read this," little circle thing. Back when Time Out, I guess, was on paper. Maybe it still is. And it was, they were asking children what their favorite things were in the city. And, you know, you see a sea of children here every day in the school buses and all that. But this 12-year-old girl was saying Cosmic Collisions at the time, that show. She had seen it 12 times. And she said, "My dad's taking me tomorrow on my birthday to see it again. You must see this." And to have children say that reminds us that we're all kids inside in some level, and of the world and the context of our world together. And so that illustration, that interplay of artists with the science to guide us and explain to us, so that a show like this is, it is a space show. I like to say emphasis on the show. This is the big top, and if we can borrow from Barnum and Bailey, hopefully the greatest show in the world. But really it's a combination of that artistry, of the foundation in the science, the beautiful explanation, Laura's scripting on this was tremendous. And it was her first space show. And the artistry that goes into the visualization, the choreography of the camera, the guide, he said, we want it to be a thrilling ride, but we don't want to upset you and make your stomach upset. But then the music, Robert Miller's music, gives wings to what you just saw. That you feel it in the heart. I don't want to get emotional, but it makes me emotional. Hopefully it makes you emotional too. And once again, I just think wonder is a gateway to the inspiration is a gateway to motivation.
Thanks. And so Vivian, we've heard a bit about the scientific insights that inspired the show, and then the artistic vision that brings together blends the science and art. Tell us about the process of producing something like this. So how do you actually pull together all of these strands to come up with the show on the other end?
How long have we got?
Hours.
Okay. Settle down, everybody. It's just a very collaborative and iterative process. It does start with the science. And then as the science is coming in and the data is coming in, there's an interdisciplinary group of scientists and artists, writers and producers that come together and really try and suss out what the story is. So the scientific themes might be motion, but then there's a story that we have to arrive at, that we want to communicate. And in this case, it became the story, our own story, the story of our sun and solar system traveling through the Milky Way. At the same time, we're doing research to find the best data sets that we could visualize to support this story. And we're hiring artists from out in the world, artists that work on feature films and commercials, to come in and visualize the data. It really is such a deep collaboration of all these team members. And we're able to do this because we have the Digital Universe Atlas, which is the set piece in which all the action takes place. So we have an atlas of the observable universe. We take the data sets and we set them in the atlas and run time. We use the same data, it's called spice kernel data, to track the motions of the solar system, all the natural objects and artificial objects in the solar system. It's the same system that NASA uses to plan their missions. So we have all of that in our pipeline, and then we take these discrete data sets and we place them in this universe, and we let the artists go to work.
Thanks. And so Jackie, I hinted at this a little bit in the introduction, but one of the, I think, really amazing things about the show is that in the process of developing the show, I understand that a new scientific discovery was made that came out of the show. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is a really fun thing that happened. So all of us have different scenes that we'll probably say are our favorites. The one that I was, all of them are my favorite. It's like kids, you can't have a favorite, so I shouldn't have said that. Take that back. But the scene, the Oort cloud scene, was a big scene. When I learned that Gliese 710 was flying through the solar system, I was freaked out, and I wanted to make sure that story got told. But then when we all sit around and we're trying to decide on how to tell that story, it became clear there were a lot of elements that we had to pull together to tell that story well. One of which was, what does our Oort cloud look like? There's going to be a flyby, there's going to star, it's going to fly straight on through our Oort cloud, but what does our Oort cloud look like? Now, that shouldn't be a shocker. We've never actually seen the Oort cloud, we've only theorized that it's there. Kind of theorized it from long period comets that come in. We have a good idea of what it looks like. We went and shopped amongst my colleagues, for who's got the best model? Who's got the best model of the Oort cloud? And what is it based on? We had multiple conversations with a number of people. All of us on the team would chat with them. And it led us to somebody named David Nizvorny. He works at Southwest Institute. And Nizvorny, everybody said, go talk to Nizvorny, go talk to Nizvorny. He's got a great model, he's got the best model, he's got the best model. So okay, talk to Nizvorny. And we asked him for the model. Can we have the model? We need to start playing with the model. Everybody else had told us, yeah, there's structure in the model. You're going to get structure out of the model. Okay, great. So we were kind of set up to look for stuff. Ms. Vorney gives us the model. We iterated a couple of times with him. We needed more particles. We needed to see it to be more dense. Our lead technical director, John Parker, was awesome in this. He's basically, I would hire him as a postdoc in my research group. He's so good at playing with data. So John's playing with the data. Carter and I are playing with the data visually in here. All of us in editorial are sitting here in the dome looking at the data. Ms. Vorney gives it to John. We're all playing with the Oort cloud. We see the Oort cloud. John's played with it enough so we can see some structure, because we've been told there's going to be structure in there. So we see it. We're flying away from the Oort cloud, and out pops this spiral, a spiral shape to the outside of our solar system. Now, it's a huge structure, millions and millions of particles. So, I'm iterating with Ms. Vorney, and I write them, and I'm saying, okay, so here's a render. We kind of want more particles. We're playing it with this way. We noticed the spiral, of course, and then he writes me back. What are you talking about, a spiral? I've never seen a spiral before. Give me a sec, I'm gonna go check that out. And then he comes back with a paper, and he says, we're gonna publish this. This has never been seen before. No one has ever seen the Oort cloud structure like that before. And he's got a great quote on it. The math was all there. We just needed the visuals. And that is what got brought to life inside of this space with this team. It happened because all the right players were at the table. The visualizers, the director, the producers, the scientists. We all sat around, and then pop goes the Oort cloud. There's so much to discover there. So you can have a look at the paper, you can have a look at the video, come back and see the show again. You'll see the spiral. It'll pop out to your eyes too.
Weren't other models also revealing this, but they just hadn't been visualized?
Yeah, so then we hear from Ms. Vorney. He's like, oh yeah, I started confirming with my colleagues that also have models. No one had seen it. They just hadn't seen it. It's there. Guys, it's in the data. Scientists, we're amazing at what we do. I'm speaking for my whole field. But it doesn't mean we can see everything right away. That's why I want to call AMNH Science Pixar. I feel like it's a good term. Yes.
We were also looking for structure so that it wouldn't just be sort of like a big blob. And there were inferences that guided artists to illustrate it as a type of form. We had discussions with other scientists, Michelle Mesner and all this, but it led to this. And then so we were looking for something. So we were primed. We were
primed.
Just assumed they knew of the spiral.
I should tell you why it's also there. So everything makes sense scientifically too. As you fly out, you'll notice all of this you can see visually if you come back and see the show. Notice the orientation of our solar system relative to the Milky Way. The Milky Way galaxy that we make such a big deal about at the start of the show. Because what's happening is the tidal forces of the galaxy itself is plucking away at our loosely bound outer Oort cloud. And then it's competing with this pull that happens with the giant planets that are interior in the solar system. So there's competing forces that end up sculpting this shape. The physics makes sense. It's a model of what our solar system looks like, but brand new insight as a result of all of us coming together and looking at it in this way.
Very cool and exciting. Carter, you've worked on all 7 space shows here at the museum, and this is the last of the space shows you'll be working on here. How is your work, and really even just looking more broadly at the field, changed over that time?
Well, lots happened. We renamed this theater the Hayden Space Theater because its predecessor that was torn down to make way for this was called the Hayden Sky Theater. Sitting underneath us here, not used in this production, is a star projector. Best in the world, Zeiss Mark 9 star projector. It's a great star projector. But we couldn't tell the stories of astrophysics, meaning the behavior and motions of the universe, with sort of a static star field. And no matter how good that star field is, and the technology's gotten better and better, we now have these Christie laser projectors that are arrayed around the dome. And they not only produce this bright image, they produce where things are black. It doesn't project black, but it blanks out the mechanism to give us that contrast and give us a sky like you saw in the opening with the Milky Way, that we really see that beauty of it. The astronauts talk about when they're in space, just the blackness that you don't have any atmosphere, and how much the Milky Way stands out, and that presence of that sense of being in this bigger realm. And so the technology has tremendously changed. But even when we started, I was mentioning conversation just outside here before we started, was that in our first imaginations of what the show could become, this was before we had assembled the data sets into what we call the digital universe that Vivian mentioned, and as this sort of foundation, that Neil deGrasse Tyson, Frank Summers, Jim Schweitzer, Dennis Davidson, myself, was in April of 1998, we're sitting around, we're having this conversation about plotting the galaxy, the Milky Way. So it's interesting, we come back into the story really of the Milky Way as my final parting shot, but we started with this digital galaxy, became the digital universe. And so we're talking about these astronomical data sets we could plot to make the galaxy. And the stars, of course, we knew that we would have this star projector, but we really wanted to emphasize astrophysics with this dome video system. And so anyway, it was sort of the first day on the job, and I was drawing pictures of this just to get our heads around it. And noting the tip of the solar system to the Milky Way is about 60 degrees, and so we're drawing this up. But I said, what are we going to do when we get outside the Milky Way? And Neil deGrasse Tyson goes, whoa, 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 Carter. We have enough to do in just plotting the Milky Way. That's hard enough. And I said, well, when we exit the Milky Way and we don't see any other galaxies, that's sort of like astronomy in 1920. We thought maybe the entire universe is just the Milky Way. And that kind of led to a chaotic discussion about, well, what other data sets are there for this? And there was this professor, Brent Telly, who had mapped 3,500 galaxies beyond the Milky Way. And that was it. And that seemed fantastical. And the National Center for Supercomputing Applications was working with him. And so we ended up working with them. And but by the time that we made that first show, from 1998 to opening in 2000, Brent had broadened that out to an amazing 30,000 galaxies. The Sloan Digital Sky Survey was coming on, and it's data release 6, whatever it is, about, how many, like 6 million galaxies, other surveys. The computers that make this possible, that make everything we do today possible, they think back to the analog days, that this computational capability not only is something that can analyze the data, but can plan what our observations are. It designs our instrumentation. It allows us to visualize. It permeates culture. At the turn of the millennium, we went from analog to digital, really. And we're still seeing the ramifications of this 20 years later, 25 years later here, now artificial intelligence. So this advance that we just live day to day, and we don't really think about it perhaps too much, but it has caused a revolution that allows us to now bring the Gaia data set into a simulation, Jason Hunt simulation, absolutely amazing, and put it on screen for you. It gives me goosebumps. I hope it gave you goosebumps.
And then so one last question to all of you, and sort of a bit of a lightning round. So Vivian, starting with you, what do you want visitors to take away from the show?
Well, I think the beautiful message of the show is that nature is dynamic. It's always changing. It's just like life. You walk out of your door, you never know who you're going to encounter or what's going to happen to you. Nothing is static in nature. And I think that there's great hope in that dynamism and in that change. And I think that's a wonderful message to walk away with.
So Jackie, how about you? What do you want visitors to take away?
So I alluded to this in the first question, that Gaia, the map, it's about this map. This map, the show is about plucking out the stories in the map that should get you motivated and excited, because it's about what we know about ourselves, the solar system, as we move through the map. But we're also just introducing you to the map exists. 1.7 billion stars mapped, distances, motions. I want kids to come in here and be like, what's up with this map? Like, I'd like to see more on that map. What else does that map have? Open up the map. Look for stuff. This is the introduction for people to the concept that there is, it's like I'm showing you the globe. This is the globe, guys. This is the map. The map of your cosmos. It's your cosmos as well. It's humanity's map. Go play with the map. All Gaia data is available for everybody. Look at where these stars are. Look at where they're going. You can make discoveries. So much science to be had. I hope that people walk away wanting to be scientists when they leave this room.
And finally, Carter, one last thought. What do you want visitors to take away?
You know, there's every space show and the creation of it. You work your way through it. We battle through it. We get it done. But then, you know, there's kind of a fresh thought that comes. And when we did the Friends and Family last week, I think it really kind of hit home that while, you know, there's this huge universe out there, or this show, we're sort of concentrating on the Milky Way and this Gaia data set, and it's this revolution in our ability, what we can show, is that because we're being parochial and local to the Milky Way, there's that emphasis of time, but it's brought home to us, I think, in kind of a personal way, that just as the solar system is our home, so too is the Milky Way. And because we can see it organically behaving in this great detail like this, there's an aspect to it that, yes, it's so far out and large, and the timescales are large. But then when Pedro tells you that, you know, we are, you know, 20 galactic years old, and that it takes, when we were here at this last orbit, it was the Triassic, and dinosaurs were just getting their legs. And that's 1 out of 20 orbits. It makes you understand that our story is a larger story of life, and that while we are single instances, that DNA of your children and the grandparents and so forth that you come from is a continuum. And that goes back, and it goes back into deep time. And I really feel that that message comes across in this story. I hope it does. I hope that's the takeaway, that this is a vast story. And then Laura's words at the end, that we may not meet, you know, in human time to these, or our time, but we understand that scale. And the last thing I'd like to leave with is that light itself, you know, is coming to us at a certain speed, and so that we see things in the distant past as we look out. But that light itself, because as Einstein showed, the time slows down to where there is no time. That time, in a way, in the universe is this great bonding agent. That while we exist and evolve in time, is that time itself, in the crucible of light, holds all that and holds us together in this tremendous union that is the universe at large. And for me, it's been a tremendous exhilaration from being 10 years old, my mom bringing me to classes in the basement of this planetarium, to having a career working here. And so it's been a great pleasure to be here across these various shows, and but end on something that I think is a pretty special production. It certainly is to me. Thank you.
So that concludes our panel. So I want to thank all of our panelists. And thanks to all of you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Stacy. Leon Roberto Lavano, the communications team at the museum. Thank you for joining us.